One of the big challenges that we see on a daily basis is that gap in death literacy, if you want to form a word around it, that understanding of what the approaches to death and dying even look like. We live in a culture where it's almost death denying. We like to pretend it doesn't happen. We certainly don't like to talk about it. And yet, since the dawn of time, the mortality rate has not changed. It is, apart from birth, the only thing that will happen to all of us, and yet we don't talk about it. There's lots of reasons for that, mostly that I think is around fear and around a focus on living, which is as it should be. We should be focusing on living. But there's a need to recognise that living includes dying. Dying is part of the human experience. It will come to all of us. And if we have the knowledge and the skills and some understanding of what that might look like, we have some choices. We have some opportunity to co-create how that might go. Instead of this being something that happens to us, it's something that we can experience and live through in a way that we want to, if we've thought about it ahead of time.
I'm Andrew Johnstone, and this is The Last Breath, a podcast about death and dying, a Free FM production made in association with Hospice Waikato. In this series, I'm talking to the bereaved, the dying, and the people who care for them. And as we explore the work of hospice, we are lifting a veil from a subject that is seldom addressed in an open and forthright manner. Susan Hassel, University of Waikato Pro-Chancellor, Hospice Waikato board member and acting CEO of Hospice Waikato, talks about the difference hospice makes to the lives of patients and families, including her own. Her husband James died a year ago, and she wonders how it might have been without the care and support that hospice provided. Then there's the issue of funding. In an insightful and penetrating interview, palliative care specialist Dr. Debbie Barham talks about her work, the lessons she learned from the death of her sister Linley, and the importance of being open and honest about death.
Hello, my name is Susan Hassel, and I am very, very fortunate to be the acting CEO here at Hospice Waikato. I've been in that role for 10 weeks. Prior to that, I was on the board. I have been on the board at Hospice Waikato for 6 years now. And so when the CEO left suddenly, I was asked if I could come in and take up the role for a few months, probably until the end of this year. I just retired from my previous role, which was the headmaster of Hamilton Boys High School, where I'd been fortunate to be headmaster for 25 years. So coming into a hospice environment from a secondary school was quite an interesting shift, moving from the world where we were preparing young men to live their lives to a world where we are supporting older people in the main, or people who are reaching the end of their life's journey, to cherish and have some very rewarding days in their last few weeks and months. It's been a shift. However, I think that there are some very real similarities between the two roles, because in both of those roles, my main purpose has always been to make sure that people get joy from their days and that they get a sense of happiness in whatever world they find themselves in. So it has been a very real privilege to move into this role, and I've been here for just 10 weeks, but those 10 weeks have taught me so much about what is so special at hospice. I think I went into being on the board at hospice as my way of volunteering, because I've also been on other boards. I'm also still on the board at the University of Waikato. I'm on their council, I'm the Pro-Chancellor there, so education's been a big part of my life. But being on the board at hospice has been something that I have felt was my way of making a small difference to this world. But when you're on the board, you really don't see just how special this world is. And I think I say to people, what's different about being the CEO than being CEO in a business or in another part of our lives. And the difference at hospice is that you're blessed by having a staff, every one of whom is totally committed to the vision. So as a CEO, I don't have to spend my time trying to encourage people to believe in the vision or to understand the vision. This is a world where the vision is front and centre of everybody's participation as an employee or as a volunteer. We all understand why we're here, and that makes such a huge difference to the culture of the organisation. It makes such a huge difference to the people we care for, because all of us are here to make their time here as good as it possibly can be, and to make the lives of their families as happy as it can be as they move together with the person they love through that final part of their life journey. And so being here has really made me understand that everyone, right through from myself to the leadership team, to the volunteers who work in the shops, to the healthcare assistants in the inpatient unit, they're all here to help in whatever way we can to make this better. So it's a privilege to be here, and every day brings me a great understanding of the love that is a really big part of the world of Hospice Waikato. And when we think about what it is we do it under the duress of not having the full financial support of Health New Zealand. Health New Zealand can't really provide the level of financial support that hospice needs to do the job well. When we think about it, hospices have only been around in New Zealand for a couple of generations, and before that there just was nothing there for families and for people who are dying as a support structure. And so hospices are a very real and important part of the whole fabric of what life is all about, and yet we can't do it without the support of our communities. We can't do it without the support of our volunteers. We have hundreds of volunteers here at hospice who save us literally hundreds of thousands of dollars a year. We can't do it without the support of our communities who are so kind in the support they give by donating to our shops, by buying through our shops, by just fundraising for us in whatever way they want to do, and just giving and being prepared to continue to give so that we can do what we're able to do for our people who live in our world, for the time that they have. And we're also very, very privileged here at Hospice Waikato to have the only paediatric palliative care world in Rainbow Place. And the Rainbow Place part of hospice is a very, very special place. We have over 50 families in our care at the moment for children who have life-limiting illnesses. Some of them are with us for years. Some of them are with us only for a few short months. But those children's lives are certainly made better and richer for being part of Rainbow Place and hospice. And so I believe are their families. Because as CEO, I hear so often, every day, from all of the families who are part of our world, just what a difference our staff are making to their experience with their child, with their loved one, whatever stage of the journey that person is at. We're able to make a difference, and that brings a lot of joy. People often say, isn't working at hospice a sad thing to be a part of? But that sense of making a difference is just so rewarding, and recognising how important those last few days of a loved one's life makes such a difference too. We have a mantra where we say that hospice supports every person to live life well until their last breath, and that's true for our children, and it's true for our adults who are part of their world that we share, and that brings its own sense of joy and reward to those of us who work here and those of us who are part of the team. It's a fantastic team, it really is. And I've seen firsthand the impact that team can have through my own experience with my husband, who passed away tragically for us a year ago last week. My family and I were very fortunate to have the support of hospice through James's last few weeks of life. Sadly, we didn't have him longer, but we found out that he was terminally ill when I was actually at a conference, an international conference. I was about 2 hours away from delivering the keynote address at the time, wearing my old hat as an educationalist, and was rung by the palliative care people to tell me that James's situation had worsened and that he was now terminally ill, that they were going to take him to end-of-life care and he was going into hospice care. And so as soon as I'd done the speech, I drove straight back down, and hospice over that time was just superb to us. They provided that opportunity for us to feel confident and calm in the steps that we were taking, which you don't feel when you suddenly find out that the person you've been married to for 35 years is only going to be with you for a few more weeks. And without them, it would have been a different experience for me. And we were told up at the hospital that James would probably live for about 8 weeks. And sadly for us, he only lived for 10 days. And that is what I do tell people often, that when you are given a prognosis for the person you love, you don't always get the amount of time that you're told you'll be given. And so every day becomes precious in those last weeks and months in a person's life, and precious for them and precious for their families, and having hospice there makes it so much easier for you to ensure that their lives are better, physically better, because they're able to manage the pain and able to manage the fear that patients go through, but also spiritually better, because they allow us as the family, I think, to share the part of the journey with that sense of being safe. And if we didn't have that in our lives, then our memories of that person that we have loved for so long would be changed in those last weeks. And I think that's a gift that you can never understand how precious it is until you go through it yourself. That those final weeks were as beautiful as our lives have been all the way through, and that's precious. And James was so much at peace. He loved the hospice nurse that came to see him. He could ask her any questions that he had. He felt comfortable. And when James died, and when people die in our inpatient unit under the care of hospice, you see that beauty. You see that sense that you are cared for as people, as a family. When James died early in the morning, and people often die at sunrise, I understand, when their breathing changes and they just slip away. It was exactly what he wanted to happen, and it happened that way. And we were rung and told, and we were down in the end-of-life care unit place within about 45 minutes, but they'd already put rosemary on his bed. They'd made him look beautiful, and they were with us right through that time, and they let us stay as long as we wanted to stay. And then when we were ready and James left, they were all there. They lined up, they sang for Kare Mai, they had rosemary for us, they hugged us. They didn't know us well, but they shared their love, and that's part of the dying process that is something that I'll always be grateful for James. And he would have loved it. He loved Whakaare Mai. I didn't ask them to sing that, but that's what we sang, and we all sang with them. And it was a memory that my whole family will share. And last week we went back and we thanked those people again for what they'd done for us that year ago. It was a very special part of the process, and you don't get that without a lot of people providing a lot of love, people who you don't even know, and that's what makes hospice such a very, very special place. And that's why I feel grateful that I've got the chance to make a little bit of a difference here. I might only be CEO for 6 or 7 months, but every day I feel grateful that I do have the chance to be here, and maybe to make a little bit of a difference from a CEO's perspective, by supporting the staff to be as good to people who are going through that situation I went through, as good to them as they were to me. So that's why I'm grateful to be here, and that's why I will always be grateful to Hospice Waikato for what they do for all of us. It's a world where Hamilton is a better place, the greater Waikato is a better place for having this organisation here, and everybody who works here understands that and does their absolute utmost to make sure that it continues as good as it can be and better than before. It really is a wonderful place to be.
Good morning, my name is Dr. Debbie Barham. I'm a palliative medicine specialist at Hospice Waikato. I've been a doctor for 23 years now and working in the field of palliative medicine for about 13 of those.
So palliative care medicine is a speciality?
It is. It's relatively new in the big picture of all that's been around for medicine, but it requires us to do our basic medical training, to then do some specialty training, and I chose to do mine in general practice, so I worked as a GP for a number of years. Then you go on and do more training in palliative medicine to become a specialist.
So what's the difference between palliative care and being a GP?
So general practice is primary care based out in the community, care of people in their home setting and living out in the community, broad base of anything and everything that can happen to people in those scenarios. Palliative medicine is a specialty in which we care for people who have life-threatening or life-limiting illness. So recognition that their cure is unlikely to be possible for these people, and the focus of their care then becomes around managing quality of life, identifying what matters most to them and going after it, and helping people through the dying phase and helping their whānau and communities in the bereavement space. So often thought of as end-of-life care, but actually much more than that now. There's recognition that palliative care starts a lot earlier than in the dying phase, but in that time frame when people realise that cure is no longer the focus of their treatment.
What do you like about being a palliative care doctor?
What do I love about palliative medicine is people often come to us and say, why would you do that? It must be so sad. It is honestly the most joyful practice of medicine that I've been involved in, where the focus on what we're doing becomes around helping people go after what matters to them. And there's a freedom in that, where we're no longer focusing on everything that's wrong and trying to fix it, but identifying everything that's right, everything that matters to people, everything that gives their life meaning, and recognising that while time might be short, there's opportunity to go after that. It's uplifting, it's life-affirming, it's joyful. There's opportunity to make a real difference when it matters most to people.
Now, you were drawn to palliative care through personal circumstances.
Yeah, so for me, my first experience of palliative care was through the illness and death of my younger sister. She was diagnosed with cancer when she was 17 and subsequently died when she was 19. So in those years, when I was actually at medical school, over those few years, I saw the best and the worst of what healthcare had to offer, and really realised what a difference could be made if people really truly understand what's going on for the person and for their family and for their community in that kind of space. So it's always been on my radar ever since I've been doing medicine. It's been something I've been aware of, but I didn't intentionally choose to go into it until some years down the track. I think you need to have some grounding, some life experience, the ability to realise the impact of this kind of work, and a level of understanding and maturity to be able to do that on a daily basis. So it took a number of years before I chose to specialise in this and make this part of my ongoing work for the future.
What sort of things were going through your mind as you were observing your sister in this system?
So when Lindley was sick, there were some great things. And those things that stood out were always around when healthcare professionals actually took the time to understand who she was, who our family were, and how we did life. And that's much less about the medicine and much more about the humanity of those involved. So I saw people doing that very well, and that's been a part of, that I've tried to incorporate into my own practice. At the same time, I saw a system that was very much about the system, that was very much about here's what we can offer, here's where we can offer it, here's what you're entitled to. And it was very system-centric and not very person-centric or family-centric. I saw resource gaps and I saw knowledge gaps and people being afraid of talking with people who were approaching end of life, particularly young people. So, Lindley was 19. She was a young woman with her life ahead of her who suddenly had that change, and people didn't know how to deal with that. So health professionals having to confront their own personal experiences and worldviews, and that wasn't always done well. They weren't always supported to do that well. And so it became an interest of mine to see, we must be the change we wish to see in the world. I don't want to work in a health system where that's how people do things. I want to work in a health system where our common humanity is the thing that drives us, that we look for opportunities to express compassion, that the care we offer, the way we deliver the care, whatever our specialty happens to be, is very much about the heart of the people experiencing it and providing it, and much less about the medicine.
Being 17 years old, how did she cope with this process?
So my sister is my hero and will always be. At the time of her diagnosis, she was 17. She was about to represent New Zealand in athletics, and she was meant to be going to Australia for an athletics meet. She was a national rep in many different sports, and then she had a diagnosis of cancer in her leg and had to have her leg amputated and have chemotherapy and a lot of invasive treatments. So all of a sudden her entire world changed. Our entire world as a family changed. The things she had been hoping for in life needed a radical rethink. Despite all of that, while she absolutely was sad and justifiably angry and asking why, she had a very, okay, well, this is the reality, so how am I going to make the most of this kind of attitude? So after her treatment in the initial phase, when she had had her leg amputated and been through a chemotherapy, she got back to school and got back to doing what she could do and looking at what are the opportunities here. So instead of winning the school athletics trophy by winning the 100 metres, she won the school athletics trophy by doing javelin and shot put and discus and the things that didn't require her to run. She won the swimming sports. Despite having one leg, she still beat everybody else. She set goals for herself to focus less on what can I not do and what can I do instead. And she faced her death in the same way. So instead of focusing on everything that was hard and horrible, and she had a really tough journey, everything that could go wrong went wrong. She had every complication from every kind of treatment, and she never focused on that. She focused on how, okay, this is what I've been given. There's no time to be wasted in asking why. It is what it is. How can I make the most of it? What is being asked of me in this space? How can I show other people how to deal with this sort of thing well? So she did a lot of speaking. She did a lot of writing, and at the time, internet wasn't the big thing, so a lot of written and fax communication. That's how old we are. But she just wanted to spread the message that despite the worst things that happen to us in life, there can be hope, there can be joy, there can be ways to make meaning in it. She had a strong faith, so as a family we have had a hope for an eternal future. And she, at the end, when things were really challenging, not once did she ask for anything for herself. Her prayers were always, how can Mum and Dad be okay in this? How can Debbie be okay in this? How can my story impact people in the future? don't worry about me, I'll be in heaven, I'll be okay, I'll see you again one day, but how can I help all of you? So she's my hero, and she inspires me to try and help other people to see that there's a positive way to face even the hardest challenges in life.
For you as a family, dairy farming family from the eastern Waikato, you've had a terrible tragedy. Was there any support for you?
We were lucky during Lily's illness. We come from a small town and a community who wrapped around us and loved us. As many people are in rural communities, you're very involved in multiple different things going on, the schools, your sports activities, your music lessons, your church, the road you live on, people get together. So very much from the beginning, from diagnosis until death, this was a community experience, that this was not a medical event. Death is not something that's all about the medicine and about the individual, but it's a social experience. So for us, we were loved deeply by our community. We had a number of people on a daily basis offering us, what do you need? How can we help? And that was a beautiful experience.
So, which brings us around to hospice, because hospice is a community-orientated place where people come to die. Is that correct?
Yeah, so I think the beautiful thing about hospice is that it's not a building. It's a philosophy of care, it's an approach to care, and it's very much about being amongst the people, wherever they happen to be. So while we do have an inpatient unit in Hamilton, and there's a finite particular place that some people can come for care, either for symptom management or for end-of-life care, the bulk of what hospice offers is that connection to people's own community, the resource to be able to support them where they happen to be, to support not only the patient but their family and their community. That recognition that as an organisation we can't do this all by ourselves. If death and dying truly is a social experience, then we need to involve communities. We need to be out there in the community, upskilling, supporting, helping people through this process so that we can all do it well together. So we often have patients and families comment on, number one, I didn't know this was here. Number two, it's not like hospital, and we love that. The philosophy of care is around understanding who people are and trying to do life with them, to help them approach death and dying in a way that feels just like how they've done life. So we have to remove the medicine from it. We have to remove the very clinical environment that people have often experienced healthcare in, and appreciate that while the medicine and the clinical component is important, and we have to get that right, it's not the most important thing. If we want people to experience the service we offer in a way that's meaningful for them, we have to meet them where they're at, and that's as whole people. So it needs to be an environment where people feel they can be themselves. There's still many things we can do to look at the environment where we're delivering care, and I think that will continue to evolve as we respond to community needs in the future.
So your day as a doctor, how is it filled out?
So a day at work can be very variable. No 2 days are alike. Essentially, the biggest thing is identifying what is the need today and how can I respond to that. There are some fixed things in our day, so we'll have often meetings in the morning where we're talking with our multidisciplinary team, so the doctors, nurses, our allied health team, family services, to just talk about the people in our care and who needs us today and where can we best use our resource. So there's often a period of just hearing what's gone on in the last 24 hours, what's going on in the course of the coming workday, and where do people need to be. Then we have a team of doctors, some of whom are based in the inpatient unit, so they'll see patients who are here with us, and that's a daily thing. There's usually a ward round, which sounds very much like a hospital, but is very much not. opportunity to sit down with people in their room and talk through what's the most important thing today, how can we help you.
So you have time for patients.
Yeah, so the big difference between hospice or palliative medicine and almost the rest of healthcare at the moment anyway, is time. Time to sit and talk with people, to hear from them first. Listening to understand and not listening to just respond. Sitting down, there's nothing that substitutes from putting a chair next to somebody, seeing the world through their eyes, seeing what's needed today, and then joining with them as a team to figure out how we can achieve that. So medicines are important as much as I like to think that the most important thing we bring as doctors is our own humanity. We recognise that there is a need for people to have particularly symptoms managed well, and that often involves the use of medicines, obviously. We use a lot of non-medicine approaches to things, so supporting people through psychological strategies, through counselling, through just helping them to understand what's going on, because often there's a lot of fear or anxiety driving symptoms that we can do a lot to alleviate. That being said, many of our patients have very complex clinical needs. People are living longer, living with illnesses for longer. That impacts them significantly. People have many diagnoses, not just one thing, so it's often quite complex to understand clinically what's going on for them. What are the medications that are helping them? What are the medications that they may no longer need because they're not helping? What approaches do we need to look at in terms of how do they take their medicines? Can they manage them by mouth, or do we need to find another way of administering things? There are a number of complex specialist-only medicines that we use, particularly here in our inpatient unit, which is why we've gone and done additional training so that we're experts in managing that kind of complexity and being able to offer particular treatment options that might not be on offer either in their home setting, sometimes even in the hospital setting. And Hospice Waikato are very proud that many of the things that we're offering clinically here, we're leading the way in New Zealand and being able to offer those things. So that's great.
Recently, my own father died and was under hospice care at home. Mm-hmm. But the thing, with hindsight, the thing that I've realised is that I was a fish out of water. Mm-hmm. I knew nothing about the process. Mm-hmm. Every day was a whole education. Mm-hmm. And I wished I'd have known those things before it happened. Mm-hmm. Because then I would have dealt with a lot of things in a different way and in a better way, which is the value of what we're doing here today. We're communicating to people that there is a process, and it's actually a very good process, but we need to know that it's there and understand how it works.
Yeah. So I think one of the big challenges that we see on a daily basis is that gap in death literacy, if you want to form a word around it, that understanding of what the approaches to death and dying even look like. How, we live in a culture where it's almost death denying. We like to pretend it doesn't happen. We certainly don't like to talk about it. And yet, since the dawn of time, the mortality rate has not changed. It is, apart from birth, the only thing that will happen to all of us, and yet we don't talk about it. There's lots of reasons for that, mostly that I think is around fear and around a focus on living, which is as it should be. We should be focusing on living. But there's a need to recognise that living includes dying. Dying is part of the human experience. It will come to all of us. And if we have the knowledge and the skills and some understanding of what that might look like, we have some choices. We have some opportunity to co-create how that might go. Instead of this being something that happens to us, it's something that we can experience and live through in a way that we want to, if we've thought about it ahead of time.
So I guess the message you're giving us now is, if it happens to you, if somebody in your family is diagnosed with terminal illness, come and see us straight away. Yeah. Let us help you navigate these choppy waters that you're about to step into.
Yeah, I think what we would love is if people understand what death, dying, meaning, bereavement, what it even means, what's available to people, what choices they may have in that process, how they might like to consider what that looks like for them and for their families. For our patients, one of the number one things we see is often the focus for them is not on them. Their focus is on the people they love, the people they will leave behind. Are they going to be okay? And so if we're able to meet with people early in the phase after their terminal diagnosis, being able to have some of those conversations, to give them the language with which they can speak to the people they love, to talk together about what matters most and how might we approach this together, then we set families up well to be able to navigate that in a way that matters to them. So I guess what we would love is if people are aware of what hospice does, who we are, and that we work in collaboration with many other healthcare providers. So these are not conversations that are exclusive to hospice, but they may be conversations that we can help you have with your GP, your primary care team, your hospital-based care teams, with those people in the community who you do life with, who may have very little understanding of the health aspects of it, but a lot of understanding at a community level. So, for instance, in my sister's journey, most of the care we received was not from healthcare providers, it was from our friends up the road, or from the people in our church, or from the grocery store who could deliver food so that mum and dad didn't have to go into town to pick it up when we had a lot on our plate. Having a service like hospice that understands that interconnectedness of how people experience the dying phase allows us to help you build those networks for yourselves, to understand who are the key people you might like to involve in your care, and it's not always healthcare professionals.
One of the problems I had is addressing the word death. While I wasn't frightened of what was happening, I was very reticent about saying it out loud because it happened very suddenly to my father, and he was a healthy, vigorous, aged man, and suddenly he's on his deathbed. And approaching that subject is very, very hard.
Yeah. I think people fear the word death, they fear the word dying, as if I speak it, it might happen. Unfortunately, it's going to happen whether you speak it or not. And I think we use a lot of euphemisms for things. We talk about, I'm sorry you lost so-and. My sister's not lost. she died. That relationship is still very real to me. And I think it just speaks to our discomfort with the whole concept of dying. And so sometimes the kindest thing that we can do as a service is introduce some of that language to confront the discomfort and to help people see it with some curiosity instead of with fear, to understand that the outcome is not going to be different because we use different language. But if we can help you to confront the fears behind the word, it's not the word death that's scary, it's the concept of how am I going to face this thing that's hard, that I've never done before, that I don't understand. So unpacking the fear that hides, I guess, behind the words that we're scared to say.
After a long week, and you've been dealing with other people's emotions and counselling them and helping them and assisting, does it ever get to you? Does it get under your skin? Or are you able to maintain a professional distance?
Yes, this work gets under your skin in good ways and in hard ways. So it gets under your skin in good ways, in that there's real purpose behind what we do. We know that we make a difference for people when it matters. And that's what drives many of us that stay in this game for a while, that there's real opportunity to make meaning here. That's the good side. Yes, as individuals, this has an impact on us. You can't sit with people going through hard times without hearing and taking on board some of the hurt beneath that people experience. But I think there's a difference between empathy and compassion. empathy, that understanding what's going on for people and carrying it or wearing it, and compassion in that I understand what's happening for you and I want to turn that into doing good or doing something about it, which is much more about giving out instead of sitting and holding it. So I think those of us who do this work are aware of the impact it has on us. We were encouraged to undertake regular supervision, so dedicated time where we sit with someone to just talk through the impact of what's going on, whether that's positive or challenging. We're very much encouraged to take time out if we need to, and there are particular cases that for all of us will trigger a response that requires us to just step back a little bit. So we work very much as a team. We talk to each other. We notice when someone's having a tough time. If you've been rostered on, like for me, this is the 12th day in a row, and it gets hard when you've been working lots of days in a row, and you need to be aware of the emotional energy, the psychological energy that's required, and where am I at an individual level? Do I need to tap out at the moment and ask a colleague to do something? Most of us have things that we do outside of work that we find joy and fulfillment in, and that fills our tank. We're very mindful that we need to be in a space where we're well and grounded enough to be able to give out to other people in a healthy way. So that's very much part of the approach of hospice, is looking after our staff, looking after each other, making sure that we're doing at an individual level what we need to do to be okay, but also that we're doing at an organisational level what it is we need to do to look after each other.
So what do you do to refresh and recharge?
So like many of staff, I have a beautiful family, so my favourite things to do is just go home and spend time with them. There's nothing like seeing the challenges other people face to give you perspective, to make you go home and hug the people you love tightly, to have some fun, to just take the moment to enjoy the sunshine, enjoy the small things in life that actually are the big things. I love to read, I love to write. I do a lot of reflective writing, which is a way to process, what's gone on in a work sense and make sense of that for myself. I think it's less about what you do and more about the intention behind what you're doing. So intentionally going about creating space in a day outside of work to fill my tank, whatever that might look like on any given week.
Experiences. Do you have any experiences you'd like to share with us?
I have infinite stories of beautiful experiences in this job. I think there are a few stories that stand out, if I can share some of those. One would be in asking an elderly gentleman who was in the hospital, and he was looking at having to be discharged to an aged residential care facility, having come in from home. So he was facing that reality of, I'm not going to be able to go home because my care needs are more than can be managed. And I asked him, what matters most to you? And his answer was, my tax return. Not quite what I expected, but death and taxes. The question is why? Why is the tax return the most important thing, which was an unexpected answer? Because for him, that's what love looked like. Being able to go home to finish his tax return meant that he could leave his wife with all their financial affairs sorted. He knew that he didn't have much time, and he knew that the most important person to him in the world was his wife, and he knew that the biggest challenge for her would be managing the financial side of things in the immediate future after his passing. So it was a really beautiful reminder that love can look like many things, and if we don't ask people what matters most, we won't get the answer that might be the necessary answer. And so for that patient, we were able to organise the ambulance to pick him up from hospital, take him to his home where he could finish his tax return, and then to take him to the residential care facility where he died about 3 days later. And his wife knew she was loved because the tax return was finished. So that's one of my favourite stories. Another would be after I was asked to go and do a death certification for a person in the community in an area that was quite a challenging area to work in. There was a lot of gang involvement, a lot of activity going on that was challenging for our team to be involved. But I've never seen such love in a house as in that environment. And sitting and having a cup of tea with the mongrel mob after, sitting and helping them work through their grief at losing a brother is a standout moment for me, that we have to remove judgment, we have to remove our biases and our expectation of what death might be like for people or what a care environment might be like for people, and just lead with love. If you walk into an environment and you lead with love, you really can't go wrong. And it was beautiful on both sides of that conversation. Other stories, I remember seeing a gentleman out in a community facility. He'd had a long-term mental health diagnosis and was cared for in a facility setting for many years. He then developed cancer and was dying, and there were conversations about where best do we care for this man. He needs to be in a mental health facility, but he has a medical diagnosis that we're not used to dealing with. And we did a visit out to this rural facility with our nursing team, myself and one of the allied health team. And we sat down with the facility nurses and the carers that worked there and decided the best thing for this man is to stay where he is. This is his home. The people in this facility are his family. And part of the job was upskilling a number of complex people in that environment who themselves had mental health diagnoses. They became the carers for this man. And so, again, just removing the biases about who can do what in the dying phase and realising who are the people that matter to this person, how can we create an environment where they're truly supported and the people who have something to offer are empowered and upskilled to be able to offer it. And so it was a beautiful experience. This man died surrounded by the people that he had done the vast majority of his life with, who themselves were not healthcare professionals. In fact, they were recipients of healthcare, but they became very skilled in loving and supporting him and working with the nursing team in that facility to do what was needed to look after their brother. I think sometimes it's around understanding that in the dying phase there's a tendency for people to become patients, that the system seems to require them to be the patient. And often what we do in our work is encourage them to continue being the person they've always been. I remember a beautiful woman who was dying of metastatic breast cancer, so she didn't have long to live. She had been a teacher for most of her adult life and was very much skilled in sharing knowledge. And she said to us one day, step into my waka. It will be in dry dock soon enough, but for now, the river is flowing. I've still got some paddling left in me. Step into my waka and we both might find out what we're here for. And this beautiful woman became a teacher for those around her about how to do death and dying. For her whānau and for her community, she taught them what it was like to go through facing a terminal illness. She taught them the terminology that she had learnt through her time in the healthcare system and many other aspects of her care. But that tendency, I think, sometimes to take away people's roles from them because they're now a patient, it's not necessary. If someone, the values that have driven them through their whole life can be the values that guide them as they face their death. It might be that we have to be creative about the way that gets lived out because they may have physical restrictions in what they're able to do, but they're still the same person with the same passions and love and values that they've had all along. It can be very affirming to help them see the ways in which they can continue to contribute those things, much like my sister did in her death. And now, 25 years later, her story still goes out and is shared with people, and she continues to be the person she was in her life.
Your own death. From what you've learned, will you face it with equanimity?
I think it's naive to think that I won't face my own death with some degree of trepidation, because I'm human. We all are, and I think we all wrestle with the uncertainty of what lies before us. I'm not afraid of dying, and many of our patients tell us the same thing. It's not death that worries me, it's the bit between here and now. It's hypothetical until it happens to you. I'd like to think that I will face it with a sense of understanding about what that might look like. I'll certainly face it with a sense of understanding who I am and what matters to me, and being able to speak that out to those who are caring for me. So a very real gift of the work we do is the ability to consider our own mortality and to think through, what would I want if that were me? What would my husband want if that is him? What will my children need if I die? How can I support them? So I'm sure it won't be easy. I'm sure there will be challenges, but I know I'll be loved and supported in facing it. I think there can be gifts in the way people die, whatever that may look like. So for someone who has a sudden death, often there's a sense of, well, they didn't suffer, so that's a good thing. For people who have a diagnosis and they have some time ahead of them, we've got time to have these conversations. That's a good thing. So I think it's less about the diagnosis and the time frame, and more about, well, I would love people to consider things before any of that. That actually palliative care, the approach to care where we focus on quality of life and what matters most, can happen at any point in your life. And what would happen if before anything went wrong we actually had these conversations? What if it was just a normal way of doing life, that we talk to the people we love about what matters to us? And in the event that something were to happen to me, what would I want? So I would encourage people not to wait until a diagnosis, not to wait until you need to be referred to hospice. Have those conversations now. You're allowed to change your mind, and the answers to those questions might change over time. But as a society, are we talking about what matters to us at a general level all of the time? There's nothing to stop us. So yes, there can be gifts if you have a diagnosis and you know there is some time. It's nothing like, refocusing your priorities and directing some of those conversations. But don't wait for a diagnosis. Have those conversations now. Tell the people you love that you love them. Tell the people you need to forgive that you forgive them. Tell the people you do life with what matters to you and how you're going to approach whatever tomorrow might look like.